A few days before Christmas, Eric the large tank engine was taking a goods train up to Kirk Ronan. He was making good time, but had to stop for a red signal at Wellsworth. "Hello, Eric," Edward said. "How are things going on your branch line?" "Oh, it's been fairly busy, with the Christmas concert coming up." Edward thought back to the days when the Kirk Ronan branch had still been open. He'd looked after a few of the trains along it back then. "The Carols by the Sea concert? Is that still running?" "Yes, I understand it's a bit of a Kirk Ronan tradition." Edward chuckled. "It is indeed. They've been holding them since 1924, he replied. A moment later, Eric's signal changed to green. "Good luck with it." "Thank you," Eric replied as he departed. He soon reached Maron Station and plunged into the tunnel beyond. What Eric didn't realize was that the other end of the tunnel was blocked by snow. "Ooh!" Eric exclaimed as he plunged into the snowdrift. He tried to move, but it was no good. Eric's guard went to get help, and Edward soon arrived. He pulled Eric's trucks free. Then he returned to help Eric. They soon reached Maron Station. "I'm sorry about this, Edward," Eric said. "Don't worry about it, Eric. Could have happened to any engine," Edward replied reassuringly. Even so, Eric couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. The next evening, Eric was bringing a heavily loaded passenger train into Kirk Ronan. Most of his passengers were visitors for the concert, and he made sure to bring his train to a gentle stop. "Well done, Eric. That was a nice, smooth ride," said a familiar voice. Eric looked over to see the Fat Controller standing next to him. He blinked, surprised. He hadn't been aware that the Fat Controller would be on his train. "Thank you, sir. Are you here for the concert?" "Yes. Helen and I decided to bring Richard, Charles, and Emily down for it." "Richard, Charles, and Emily?" Eric asked. "Our children. Richard is the oldest, and Emily is the youngest." "Oh, well, I hope you and your family enjoy the concert, sir." "Thank you," replied the Fat Controller. A few minutes later, Eric backed down onto his coaches for the return journey. But as he chuffed back along the line, the sky darkened and the snow got heavier. Fog had set in by the time Eric reached Rolf's castle, and the young engine couldn't help worrying. The weather continued to worsen as he approached Kelsthorpe Road. By the time he got there, he could barely see where he was going. In fact, he didn't see the station master waving a red flag until he was almost on top of him. "What's wrong?" Eric asked as his few passengers disembarked. "We've had to stop all trains due to the storm." Eric smiled. He was glad he wouldn't have to go out in this weather again. But one of the waiting passengers didn't share this sentiment. "Now look here," he said angrily. "My wife and I have paid good money for our tickets to that concert, and our fares there. I imagine the concert would be postponed in this weather. After all, it's held right on the seaside," said another voice. The station master and passengers turned to see a distinguished, elderly gentleman standing at the foot of the stairs. It took Eric a moment to recognize Sir Charles Topham Hatt. After all, he'd only met the former Fat Controller once or twice before. Sir Topham turned to the station master. "You'd better call Kirk Ronan and find out how they're doing." The station master nodded and headed for his office. Sir Topham turned and addressed the waiting crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, the North West Railway will honour the tickets you purchased for travel to Kirk Ronan tonight." A relieved murmur went up from the waiting crowd. "Excuse me, Sir Topham," Eric said, "but what about the people who are already there?" Before Sir Topham could reply, the station master came up to him. "Excuse me, sir, but I can't get through to Kirk Ronan." "The station?" "The town, sir. I've been able to contact Rolf's castle, but they can't reach anyone in Kirk Ronan either." A worried frown crossed Sir Topham's face. He'd been going to join his son and grandchildren at the concert. "It sounds like they may be snowed in," he said. "Snowed in?" Eric asked. "He means they're trapped by the snow, Eric," Henry explained from the main line. "If we don't do something, they could be trapped there for days. Do you think you could get to Kirk Ronan in this weather, Eric?" Eric hesitated before replying. "I'm not sure, sir." He shivered, remembering the snowdrift he'd run into the day before. Then another thought struck him. His fire had kept him warm until Edward had pulled him out. But people, like his passengers, didn't have fires. He could only imagine how cold and uncomfortable it would be for them. "I'll do what I can, Sir Topham." Sir Topham grinned as Eric left his train to turn on the turntable.